Hello everybody, welcome to Deluxe Collectibles, and today we're going to be doing my reaction and review for Amphibia Season 2, Episode 11, The Shut-In. If you would like to check out my reaction to this episode, you can be sure to go down below to the top of the description of this video where you'll find a link leading you over to Google Photos where you'll be able to view my full uncut reaction to the episode, and then once you're done watching that, you can feel free to come back over here to this video where I'll be telling you my full spoiler review for the episode, which is what we're going to get into right now. And keep in mind as well, this is the last episode of Amphibia Season 2 for 2020, and then the second half, will pick up once again in 2021, so there's going to be a bit of a hiatus for a while on these videos, but I do plan on putting something in place of it. Potentially, I'm planning on reacting to the Owl House. I've already seen the first half of the first season, but I haven't seen the second half, so I figured I could wind up doing reactions to that, so let me know your thoughts on that as well. But without further ado, let's get straight into it here. I've got my laptop here. I wrote a ton of notes for this episode. There was quite a bit to cover, a lot of references in this one, so it's going to be a lot of fun here. So basically, the episode begins with the intro, except now it's been sort of ghoulified, I suppose, or Halloweenified, however you want to say it, and it looks awesome. They did such a great job with it. Some really fun transitions as well that feel very spooky and get you in that sort of Halloween mood, and that's something they'll definitely say here, because within the episode, they're not specifically celebrating Halloween. They're celebrating something, as you can tell by the title of the episode, called The Shut-In, which is basically where there's a blue moon over them, and basically if you go outside you get turned into a giant hideous creature of some sort, basically. So something pretty terrifying that they want to avoid for sure. Now, it seems like it could be a myth or it could potentially be real, but of course the characters don't really want to take the chance to find out, so they all shut in every year, and it's really interesting how they kind of did that and how they sort of paralleled with Halloween a little bit, because the episode begins with them sort of trick-or-treating, I suppose you could say, but they're getting supplies basically to kind of arm themselves inside their home in case anybody winds up turning, and just to keep themselves safe. So I found that really interesting, and to sort of be a fun twist on that sort of classic trick-or-treating that they would normally be doing in an episode like this. So I did like that. It felt very creative as well, and basically the characters trap them inside, and you can kind of tell where the episode's going here, that it's going to be an episode where they all just tell spooky stories, and that's what it winds up being. It kind of reminded me of the Gravity Falls episode with the bottomless pit, where they just tell stories as they're endlessly falling in that pit, and I found that really interesting, kind of just the parallels between that as well. But it was really fun. They told a wide variety of stories, honestly. It starts off basically with Polly trying to tell a story called A Night at the End, but the thing is, it winds up being that, of course, all of the characters were there during that story, so it's not like a new made-up story, because this episode has been officially confirmed as non-canon, so all of these stories that they tell aren't really anything official within the series, other than the ones that Polly attempts to tell throughout it, but those ones aren't actually fully told within this episode, because those had their own designated episodes, and those ones include, as I said, A Night at the End. They also have Children of the Spore, and then the last one is Anne, which is just the first episode of the series where we're introduced to Anne, and she's kind of looked at as a monster, so that was pretty funny as well, some fun callbacks right there. But the first official story that they do tell in this episode is called Phone Mo, and this one is by Anne, and it basically takes place at her school. It's kind of an opposite of what her actual school is, but basically we pick up at the school, and I thought this was a really awesome idea for an episode, because we actually get to see human versions of Sprig and Polly, which was just awesome, something that I would have never imagined us getting to see. The only one from the main cast who we don't get to see is Hot Pop, which kind of made sense. He wouldn't really fit in with the setting, of course, because they're in like a school, but we do get to see two other characters as well, who I did write down in my notes, who are Hattie and Brody, and Hattie is based on Maddie Flower, who was Sprig's fiance in one of the episodes, and of course they wound up breaking that off and then just becoming friends, but if you remember her. And then Brody was based off of Toadie, who is Mayor Toadstool's assistant, so I found that really interesting that they kind of took those characters. I honestly didn't really realize it when I was first watching watching the episode, but when I did my research for this part of the review, I found that out, and I found that quite interesting. I thought it was cool how they didn't just come up with new characters, but they actually took existing characters and just turned them into humans, so I found that really interesting. This definitely had a bit of a Gravity Falls vibe to it, just because they were all humans, just as Gravity Falls is most of the time, so I found that really fun. The school setting was really cool to kind of explore, and basically the plot of this one is that there's this video going around of this really cute cat, but the thing is, apparently people who are watching it are actually disappearing, so I thought this was a really cool premise for sure, definitely something really fun as well. And there's also a bit of an Easter egg as well for YouTube in the title of the story that Anne's telling, because they have like little title sequences for all of them. There's a little YouTube logo within the O of Mo, and I thought that was just really fun as well, because of course the video is most likely on YouTube, and they make another really fun reference as well, or a fun little jab at YouTube videos, I suppose, when Anne basically sees the video as 10,000 likes and then 0 dislikes, and she's like, wow, that never happens on any videos, and it's quite true. I mean, most videos do get at least a few dislikes if they're getting that amount of attention, at least. Of course, if you find smaller videos, they may not, or just a good video, but most of the time you're going to find dislikes on them nonetheless. And basically Anne meets up with Hattie, and Hattie actually winds up watching the video and disappearing, so we get to see it first at hand right there, how they kind of disappear. It's almost as if they get sucked into the phone, I suppose you could say, and then we get to see Anne playing with a flamingo and a Gila as well, and those two are actually meant to be references to Beanie Babies, just kind of the way they're designed with the tags on them, so I thought that was a cool little reference as well to sort of include there. So we get to see that. We also get to see a poster in the background for Suspicion Island as well, which of course is a sort of running inside series within this series that of course Anne and all of the characters really enjoy watching, so I thought that was a pretty cool reference as well. And one of her plushes as well as of Hot Pop also, which is really cool. But basically Anne winds up talking with Sprig, or Twig, I suppose. I forgot to mention that. All of the characters within this story have different names than their actual names. Anne is called Anna, then we have Sprig as Twig, then we've got Polly as Molly, and then, as I said, we have Hattie and Brody, or originally Toadie and Maddie, so I thought that was really cool as well, just kind of give some differentiation between those two so nobody gets confused when they're calling their names. But basically, Anna winds up talking to Twig, and Twig winds up kind of warning her and saying, you didn't watch that video, right? Because more people seem to be disappearing, and Anna's like, actually I have no self-control and I did watch that video. And then Anna, it sounds weird saying Anna, every time I say it I'm like, I think I'm talking about like Frozen or something, but talking about Anne, basically, you know what I'm talking about, I'm sure, and all the visuals on the video as well, so you can see who I'm talking about. But basically, she takes a look at the video and she sees that the little, like, cat sort of creature kind of reminded me of, like, gremlins almost, or critters, something of that sort. And basically, she winds up seeing that the people trapped in there are actually Brody, you have Molly, and then you have Hattie as well. And then you've also got this guy there who looks like a teenager, but he's got, like, a beard and everything, and he's like, I've been trapped in here for like 35 years, and I mean, that's pretty terrifying, to be honest, especially seeing how long that video's been going around. I don't even know if YouTube's been around for 35 years, but you know, it kind of drives the point home that you're basically trapped in there. But the creature actually winds up escaping out of the phone, which is supposed to be a reference to The Ring as well when the phone creature escapes, so I thought that was quite cool as well. And also I thought a cool thing was that Anne's phone case kind of looks like a cat, and I found it funny that a cat-like creature is escaping from it, so that's kind of cool as well. But it winds up escaping, Anne winds up trying to fight it off, basically, but she's kind of unsuccessful at first. It grows to a giant size, but she actually winds up insulting the creature. And what I found cool as well was that the creature actually has a play button and then a pause button as both of its eyes, so I thought that was really cool. But Anna winds up insulting it so much and winds up disliking the video repeatedly, and then also putting a mean comment as well, which winds up putting the final nail in the coffin for that creature, and it winds up escaping and turns into a bunch of boba balls, and everybody gets freed. And then the guy there who was trapped in in there who's older now is like, well, I better go reunite with my family, I suppose. Meanwhile, he's been gone for like 35 years, so that's gonna be a lot of catch up that they're gonna have to go through, but basically, then we end that story with the creatures, with everybody kind of leaving, and then we get to see the creatures hatching from the boba balls, so I thought that was pretty interesting as well, kind of ending it with a bit of a teaser there, but I don't feel like we'll ever pick up on what's going to happen there. I think it was just kind of a cool, fun way to end it on a bit of a cliffhanger there, and then we return to everybody else now, and it's pretty funny, and kind of mentions, oh, it's actually Wally's birthday, and then we get to see Wally celebrating his birthday all alone in the shut-in, so I thought that was pretty funny. Poor Wally for having to celebrate his birthday with literally nobody. Kind of similar to what we're going through in real life, honestly, so a little bit of a parallel there, I suppose, just coincidental that the episode's airing in such a time that we're living in right now with all of the events going on, but basically we get to see that, and then we get to go to Polly's second story that she attempts of Children of the Spore, but once again, they close it off because they're like, we've already heard this story, and then we transition to Hot Pop's story, which is called Dead End, and it involves this character called Mr. Littlepot, and he's actually guest star, like the guest star who's voicing him is George Takei, so I thought that was really cool for sure. He has such a great voice, so it brought a really interesting sort of tone to the episode, I felt, and kind of a creepy vibe as well that he was able to pull off really well, while also sounding very mild-mannered as well, as I trip over my words there, but we get to see that, and basically Hot Pop in this story has a big luscious locks of hair, which is really cool, and he kind of tends to go on about that for a little bit, but then we get to pick up with the story, and he winds up picking up this Mr. Littlepot and taking him to his destination, but they make a few stops along the way where Mr. Littlepot visits these people. Basically, he looks at his pocket watch, and then he goes in, and then basically we wind up hearing the people usually wind up screaming, and then he comes back out, and he's like, alrighty, let's go to the next destination. So something suspicious is definitely going on with this, as we can all probably tell. So we get to see that. We basically get to see them kind of going around, and then they keep doing this. It's kind of just not repetitive, but they keep doing the same thing, and Hot Pop starts to kind of catch on to it, and he's like, oh no, and then Mr. Littlepot's like, don't worry, we just have one last destination, and then we'll be done, then you'll get paid, and Hot Pop's like, okay, let me just check what the last place is, and then he looks, and it's actually the Planter Farm, so it's his home, of course, and he is just terrified. The expression that he gives is just total horrified look, and basically he grovels at Mr. Littlepot's feet, just kind of begging him, spare me, but then he takes out his scythe and he just chops off Hot Pop's hair, and then he takes it, wears it as a wig, and walks off into the mist. So I thought that was pretty funny how Hot Pop kind of started the story with kind of really emphasizing his giant locks of hair, and then by the end of the episode we get the payoff there of Mr. Littlepot stealing the hair. Now what I'm interested about though is, what did he do to those other people? Because he never stole any of their hair, so I'm actually wondering if he wound up like killing them or something like that. It's kind of dark for sure, so I'd be really interested to kind of find out what actually happened, but I have a feeling we never really will unless the creator kind of lets us in. But it's kind of fun as well just to kind of have it in our imagination, I suppose, of what sort of wound up happening, so I think that's kind of interesting as well. So basically then we have that happen. And then we have Polly try to tell her final story about Anne, which of course does not wind up going well, because Anne, once again, is like, you're trying to tell a story about me as if I'm like a monster once again, so I thought that was pretty funny. Then Sprig goes to tell his story, and it's pretty funny at the start. He's like, I actually don't know the name for it, and then it cuts him off with the title sequence there, and it's called Skin Deep, and this one is honestly, at least in my opinion, the scariest one. This one is super morbid, I would say, so just get ready for that. I mean, if you've watched the reaction, I assume you've watched the episode, so you would already know what happens, but we're gonna go in depth here about it. So the story is actually a really good one, though, considering this isn't a canon episode. It's pretty good at kind of developing that relationship between Sprig and Ivy, so it was really nice to see her return. Of course, with us not really being at home with all of them, we haven't really seen Ivy in a while, so it's nice to see her return here in this episode. And it starts off with them playing getting some bug bowl. We get to see Ivy actually have her like beanie removed, and we see a bunch of her hair, and she's a little bit self-conscious about it, but Sprig's like, hey, I think it looks nice on you. And I mean, it is a pretty stellar hairdo she has going on. It's pretty darn cool. And then they wind up going into the forest basically to go kind of try to get their bug ball, which they wound up losing, and they stumble into this little like shack basically where they see some pretty creepy things. One of those things including a bunch of frog skins that are basically just coming out of a barrel, and it's pretty darn morbid to just see a bunch of like frog skins that have just been ripped off the frog. So I thought that was definitely a really creepy thing that they had going on there. So pretty spooky stuff for sure. Very morbid, I'm sure, as you can see up on screen. Then we get to see this character who kind of seems like a reference to maybe the Texas Chainsaw Massacre and Leatherface, because it's kind of a bunch of like heads just sewn onto this body here, and it is a super creepy design, probably the creepiest one I would have to say in my opinion. So we get to see it come in here, and it's basically gonna assumedly like try to take their skins as well. But then we get to see Polly and Sprig and Ivy successfully kind of take the skin off of this creature, and it winds up being this like toad that is like a translucent toad, so you get to see basically all of its organs. And then we kind of get a nice moment where Ivy's like, oh, it's kind of just going through the same thing as me, where it's self-conscious about the skin that it's living in, kind of like how Ivy was about her hair at the beginning of that story within the episode. So I thought that was a nice moment, but then it completely went in a direction that I did not expect, where we get to see basically Ivy just puts her hat over the creature, kind of blinding it, and then we get to see Sprig just light the place on fire. So I mean, I would assume they burned that creature like dead, basically. They just lit it on fire. So a pretty morbid ending to that story, I would have to say. It was definitely not the sort of angle that I thought it was going to go in, so I found that really interesting. They wind up escaping from it, and then the story ends, and everyone's like, Anne's like, oh, I want to know what happens next, or like, what happened to the creature, and it was just really funny. I thought that was probably the best one, but then he takes it a step further, and they hear a knock at the door. They open it, and it winds up being the Leatherface, like, creature. The I know it had a name, the seamstress, that's it. I wanted to make sure I said it correctly. I wrote the note down for it. But we get to see the seamstress head, but it's actually Ivy wearing a mask, and they're like, oh, don't worry, it's not an actual frog skin. She just sewed this together and made it. But yeah, they take it a step further, and it's probably the best story. I would probably say, ranking the stories, I would say that Sprig's was my favorite, then probably Hot Pops, and then Anne's, but I still liked Anne's. I just thought it was probably the least scary one. Even though it is pretty scary to be stuck in a phone forever, because obviously no freedom there. But basically we get to see the episode. At the end of it, we get to see that Polly has gone out of the house, and she's left a note saying that she's gone outside to go look at the blue moon, and yeah, so that she can get a good scary story, because she was the only one who couldn't tell a good scary story. So they go outside with an umbrella, and they see Polly out there, and then she turns around as if she's all menacing, and she's like making an evil laugh, but then she's like, nope, I did not turn into an evil creature or anything, so I guess it was just a myth. And then they all head back inside, but then we get to see Polly transform into like this almost like werewolf-like creature with these tusks and everything. And the interesting thing here, that I don't know if too many people would have realized this, I actually didn't initially, but once I thought about it, it is actually a reference here, because we see that Polly kind of grows 2 legs, basically, I would say. Like, I know her 2 arms basically just get bigger, so she can kind of walk on them, but they could kind of be considered legs. And I know that in the episode Marcy at the Gates, which aired on August 15th, we saw Marcy say to Polly that she would grow legs in 2 months, and then at the end of this episode, she did technically grow legs, and this episode aired on October 17th, so that's almost exactly 2 months after that episode aired. So I thought that was really cool. I don't know if that's actually supposed to be something that we were meant to kind of find out as a little Easter egg there, or Polly will still at some point in the series wind up growing those legs. So I'm really interested there, because of course this episode is an actual canon within the series, so it could still wind up happening, of course, at some point within the series. But I thought that was just a really cool little Easter egg there. And then that's where the episode ends. We get to see basically a really cool end credit sequence as well where we get to see Anne and Sprig from the original season 1 end credit sequence that they would do, but now they're just there with skin, like just bones and with no flesh on them, so it's pretty creepy. And yeah, that is it for the episode. I have talked for like 20 minutes here. This is a long review, but there was a lot to cover here. Just going over my notes here, I don't think I actually missed anything, so that's a good thing because I had a lot of stuff written down for that. But thank you so much for checking out this reaction and review. I really do appreciate it. I love this episode. I think it's got to be one of my favorite Halloween specials of any sort of like animated series. I thought it was really well done with some really spooky stories and ones that didn't really feel the same as each other. They were very different from each other, so I like that as well. So yeah, just overall a great episode. Be sure to let me know down below what your thoughts are on the episode and what was your favorite scary story that they told within the episode. And if you did enjoy the video, be sure to leave a like and also subscribe if you want to see any of my future content. There is going to be a bit of a hiatus for now for all of the like Amphibia reactions, since season 2 is taking a break to pick up once again in 2021. But for now, you can check out some of my other videos. I focus on Lego, Funko Pops, reactions as well. I still do reactions, of course. I'm currently reacting to Lego Ninjago season 13, so you can check that out as well. And I do plan on hopefully getting to do videos on the Owl House, so stay tuned for that as well. But thanks so much for checking out this video. I'll see you all next time, and always remember, keep on collecting.